Who will be the week one starter at defensive end opposite Micah Parsons? We'll tell you next.
You are Locked On Cowboys, your daily Dallas Cowboys podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome back to the Locked On Cowboys podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. We'd like to thank you for making us your first listen of the day. Today's episode is brought to you by Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use promo code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off your first purchase. Welcome back. I am your host, Marcus Mosher. You can follow me on Twitter at Marcus_Mosher. Joining me today, as always, is Landon McCool. You can follow him on Twitter at McCoolBCB. And on today's show, we're continuing our training camp preview. And now we're looking at the defensive ends. We know Micah Parsons is going to be one of the starting defensive ends, assuming a contract gets done. We're not talking about that today. That's for a different show. But opposite of Micah, who do you think is going to be that other starting defensive end now that DeMarcus Lawrence and Chauncey Golston are gone?
I certainly think early on they're gonna rely heavily on Dante Fowler and see how much he can play, on early downs, as well as obviously as a designated pass rusher role that he was famously playing a lot of with the Cowboys. And then eventually we'll start to see a Kneeland or Williams rotation step in there, depending on the health of Williams and the development of Kneeland. But I think we're going to see healthy doses, I think, early on of Dante Fowler. And then with the hope that somebody kind of come and takes those early down snaps from him so that he can be freed up to do exclusively rush the passer.
It's crazy how much better I feel about the defensive line as a whole now that Dante Fowler's back. And I remember saying this at the time. I think the Cowboys signed Dante Fowler on a Friday afternoon, and I remember calling you the moment it happened. And it's like he's the one piece that kind of just glues everybody together. And he's not an amazing run defender. He's smaller. He's not a dynamic pass rusher. He's a good pass rusher. But the fact they have another veteran that they can put on the other side, that can get up the field, that can win, just makes you feel so much better about the defensive end rotation. And that was before they even drafted Donovan Ezeiruaku. But I think Fowler's presence just makes the floor so much higher here.
Yeah, before you had him, you had this idea of these two guys who, you feel like we're going to play good football this year. You feel like we're going to take a step in Williams and Kneeland, but you just didn't really know. I mean, you saw some good stuff from Kneeland. You've definitely seen a lot of good stuff from Williams at certain points, but he's been inconsistent. He got injured. So it's also just been a long time since you've seen him. So I just feel like there was a lot of unknown there. And what you feel like with Fowler, he brings in is a certain amount of certainty. He's just a guy who is guaranteed to give you 8 to 10 sacks, if he's getting enough opportunities. So I think at the very least, he provided a nice floor for the pass rush, which you definitely needed at that point. And then now it frees up the opportunities for guys like Kneeland and Williams to develop without the pressure of having to be the guy right away.
Correct.
And I think that's a more appropriate learning curve for one guy who's coming off of an injury and another guy who's entering his second year in the NFL.
So I think debating who's going to be the starter opposite of Micah Parsons is a little kind of a waste of time, right? Because they're going to rotate all these guys in. There's probably going to be early down edge defenders are going to be pass rushing guys. I think obviously Donovan Ezeiruaku, who we're going to talk about in a little bit, he's going to be more of your pass rusher. I think what's really more valuable is who ends up playing the most snaps. And if I had to bet on who's it going to be opposite of Micah, I do think it's probably going to be Fowler.
Yeah, I just think he's going to get a heavy dose early on as the other guys kind of get their feet underneath him. And then once, his role kind of solidifies as those younger guys get, more snaps, he's still going to get a heavy dose on pass rushing downs. They're going to want him getting after the quarterback in every opportunity that they have a known passing situation. He's just going to be the guy that you feel like consistently you're going to deploy and when you need a big play from your defensive end. But what you've got in these other guys is kind of more, some snap eating with some big play potential. But with Fowler, like he's juice on the edge, not quite Micah Parsons juice, But certainly, if you're in a passing situation, he's a very dangerous player to have to account for if you're an offensive game planner.
All right, so we've mentioned Micah Parsons. Let's talk about him a little bit. He's going into year 5 now. He's 26 years old. This will be the 3rd defensive coordinator he's had in 3 years. How do you think he fits Matt Eberflus's defense? And do you think this scheme is going to help him, hurt him, or not really change anything?
I think listen, Micah Parsons is the centerpiece of the defense. So every defense is going to fit him because the defense is going to come in to fit to Micah Parsons. So yes, I think he'll be a good fit. I think Eberflus will know ways to use him appropriately. I don't know that Eberflus has had a guy like this at any point really in his defensive career. I'm trying to think
David Irving?
Look what could have been. I think he's got to listen. This is a guy who's incredibly a talented pass rusher who's also versatile enough that if you want to play him in the middle of a linebacker, quote unquote, he can do some of that too. And I think he probably will. I think that they will move him around. I don't think that Eberflus has a history of moving guys around, but again, like Eberflus doesn't have a history of having Micah Parsons, so he's not dumb. He knows how to get the best out of his good players, and I think he'll find a way to continue to do that. And for Micah, he's running a race on his own. He's so far out in front. Like him and Garrett kind of exist in a different realm than all the other defensive players. So I think for him, he's chasing greatness. I'm hoping that the big thing for him is just kind of staying healthy and staying on the field.
Yeah.
I think he's shown that when he stays on the field, he produces. So I think that's going to be really, really just the most important thing is having enough guys to kind of keep the rotation healthy enough that you don't overwork him and you give him opportunities to stay healthy throughout the season.
Do you know there's still a subsection of Cowboys Twitter that wants to see Micah Parsons as a full-time linebacker? And
I've seen it. Yeah.
He's a better fit at linebacker. You've got an all-pro, a 2-time all-pro edge rusher, a one-time finished second team, somebody who is getting defensive player of the year votes, and you want to move him. Whatever. The other thing I want to ask you is, do you think we could potentially see Micah Parsons playing more on the right side this year with Matt Eberflus? Because Micah's really only been a left side player, playing against those right tackles. We've heard Micah talk about how that's not really his best side because I think he said he's left-handed and he's better.
He prefers playing on the left side, and that because that was the thing.
Or on the right side. Is the other side? Does he prefer playing against left tackles or right tackles?
He prefers. It's not about the tackle for him, from what I understand. It's about the hands. And he likes playing on the left side because the comment was when Ezaraku got in, he's like, man, thank goodness you can go play on the right side. Right. Okay. So I think that's what we're going to see more of is because that is his preference. Now, traditionally, the left side is often what we would consider to be the strong side defensive end because most formational stuff, is strong side right. So it's going to be interesting to see how that all plays out. But I do wonder, is this going to free him up with more opportunities to play more on the left side because they feel like they've got a pass rusher who can consistently win against left tackles in the NFL?
Yeah, it'd be really great. It'd be great if they could just move him around depending on the matchup, right? If they can go out and hunt the worst tackle or even on third downs, hey, he's going to go up against a center or guard and, having his versatility and flexibility to move around is one of his greatest strengths. I would hate for him to lose that, but it sure feels like with all the additions they've made on the defensive line with Fowler, with Ezaraku, with Marshawn Kneeland now in year 2, that they're going to have the guys that's going to, allow him to be flexible, multiple. I can't wait to see it play out.
Yeah, it's going to be one of the keys to the defense. I think it's going to be one of the strengths of making sure this defense can attack the way they need to is being able to deploy Parsons where they need him in order to attack the quarterback.
All right, let's talk about some key reserves to the Cowboys. And we're going to talk about 2 former second-round picks. The Cowboys love to use second-round picks on defensive ends, in case you didn't know. Let's talk about Marshawn Kneeland and Sam Williams, both players entering massive years. We'll discuss them next. This episode is brought to you by Game Time. Have you ever decided at the last minute that you have to head to the ball game with your family? Maybe it's game day and you suddenly realize that you need to be in the stands. That's exactly where Game Time comes in. It's the easiest way to grab last minute tickets without all the stress. And with the money that you save on tickets, you can splurge on food, drinks, merch, or even invite a bigger group to come with you. And Game Time makes it all possible. Game Time makes buying tickets fast and simple, and prices on the app actually go down the closer that you get to first pitch. And they've got incredible last minute deals, clear seat views, and a lowest price guarantee that takes the worry out of buying. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use promo code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account, redeem promo code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off. Download the Game Time app today. Last minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed. Welcome back to the Locked On Cowboys podcast. We'd like to thank you for making us your first listen of the day. We are discussing the Cowboys defensive end situation heading into training camp. And let's talk about some former second-round picks, Marshawn, Kneeland, Sam Williams. These guys are going to play a lot, but what are we expecting from them this year?
Yeah, I've got big expectations for these guys. I'm excited to see both of them play. I think Sam Williams is a guy that, let's start with Sam, right? It's been a long time since we've seen Sam play. He got injured right near the beginning of training camp, right? It was before training camp. Like, I'm trying to remember the timeline of that.
It was the first practice. I think it was the first padded practice of training camp.
Yeah, so it was very early on. And clearly there was high hopes for him. He had changed his body a little bit. He had gained some weight. I think he was kind of making a move towards trying to take on that strong side defensive ends position. But he still is, the one of the fastest, most explosive players on the team. I mean, I think in this last OTA mini camp, he had the fastest speed for a non-defensive back defensive player, or at least the fastest defensive line.
Yeah.
It was like 21 miles an hour, something like that. It's ridiculous. I mean, the guy can still really, really run. He's bursty too. It's not just like long speed. He gets off the ball really well. He's had some discipline issues. He's had, and I mean that on-field play discipline issues. He's had some off-field discipline issues in some ways
last
too.
Year. Yep,
absolutely. So I think he is a guy that is extremely talented. He works really hard. I feel like he had kind of straightened off things a little bit and really kind of put in a lot of extra work in the offseason previous to this, and was really close to breaking out, and unfortunately got an injury at like the worst possible time. So I'm still really excited about seeing what he does. It's a contract year for him, so he's got a lot to prove at this point. And then for Kneeland, it's a guy that he came in, I think, got an unfortunate injury, I think probably week 2 or 3, and kind of showed you a couple different things.
Week 5, it was against the Steelers on that Sunday night game. It was
that's right.
They already had a bunch of injuries in that game, and like 3 plays in, he gets hurt, and they were just decimated on the defensive line.
And he had started playing really well at that point too. Like, I mean, it started like it's been a little bit rough early on, but you started to see a couple different snaps, and it had to be, because at that point, like you mentioned, the injuries had already decimated the position so much that he was like one of the key defenders, because he at least was a draft pick playing defensive end, and you just didn't have anybody else left. And then for him to go down was terrible. He came back, and I think he played admirable football, but he was still, a rookie, recovering from an injury, and it just wasn't quite the same. So I really, again, have, obviously all healthy. It wasn't anything long-term. And he's had a nice offseason. So I'm really excited to see where these two guys are. I wonder where their size is. That's what I'm interested to see, because, both of them kind of vying for that DeMarcus Lawrence replacement role, and both of them trying to be kind of bigger and stronger to kind of help support the edge, because that's been the area where, even this, despite with all our conversations about defensive tackle play and the ability to stop the run, it's been at the edges where there's been almost the worst, especially last year, because with all the injuries that the Cowboys have been gashed the most. So, and part of that is obviously, like I said, injuries, but they need these guys to be better two-way players. They need these guys to be specifically better run players, because with Dante Fowler, with Micah Parsons, you've got what you need for sure to get after the passer. These guys need to do that too, but they need guys to come in and start being solid to good run players on the edge, difference makers to help stop the run.
Let's start with Marshawn Kneeland, because I got some comments. First of all, happy birthday, Marshawn Kneeland.
Hey.
Turns 24 today, so there you go.
Yes.
That injury really messed him up, because he played actually pretty well the first 4 games of the season. And then we didn't see him after he got hurt in week 5. We didn't see him again until week 12. And even then, you could tell he wasn't quite the same player.
It was tough to come
back. And I think, all things considered, I think the Cowboys probably want him to win that other defensive end spot, because I just think he's got the biggest body, and he's the most naturally powerful of all the defensive ends. And it doesn't hurt that he's got comparing him to like Sam Williams, he's got 3 years left on his contract, and Sam Williams has 1. So I think they want Marshawn Kneeland to win the job, but I just won't be surprised if Sam Williams is a better fit in Matt Eberflus's defense. I don't think Mike Zimmer necessarily loved Sam Williams. I know we didn't get to see it, but I know, like, you think about the personality types, and they don't really mesh all that well. But I wouldn't be surprised if Sam Williams is just a much, much better fit in this defense. But again, like we said with Fowler, they're going to rotate a lot of these guys, and you're probably looking at 20 to 25 snaps a piece for Kneeland, for Sam Williams. Fowler will probably get a little bit more. We'll talk about some other guys, but these guys are going to be big time contributors for the Cowboys this year.
Yeah, and that's with, again, another second-round pick waiting in the wings at defensive end that we're going to talk about in the third segment. So, yeah, these guys are going to be heavily relied on, because, again, injuries are going to happen, and rotation is a key part of this position, keeping these guys fresh. And I think, much more so than Fowler, you need these guys to be better, more versatile players, because you need them to eat up snaps on all downs, where Fowler, you want to be able to focus eventually to rushing the passer. These guys are definitely going to be rushing the passer. That's maybe the most important job they have, but they're also going to be very heavily relied on in the run game. So you need them to kind of create a level of versatility. For Kneeland, it needs to be a little bit more rusher, I think. And Sam Williams, it's a little bit more of a better run player.
Yeah, and if the Cowboys are going to have success on defense this year, we should have said this at the top, but it's going to have to be because of their pass rushers, right? Like the defensive tackle spot, which we covered on Monday. It's also Digizua. It's Mozzie Smith, who you're hoping takes a step. And then there's just not a lot of depth. This is the strength of your team, at least early on in the season. You have 4 or 5 defensive ends that you feel really good about. You need all of these guys to play really well. And when Dante Fowler's out of the game, you need Sam Williams and Marshawn Kneeland to pick it up and not have a drop off. And if Micah Parsons goes out, you need these guys to figure out a way to get to the quarterback. This is one of the deeper rooms that they've assembled in a long time. I feel good about it. And if one of these two players, like Sam Williams or Kneeland, can really take a step forward here, I think you're going to feel awesome about the room going forward.
Yeah, you need pass rush in this defense. You're going to play a lot more zone coverage than you have in the past. And that means you need to get pressure with four guys. And in order to do that consistently throughout the game, you need to be able to rotate these guys. So you need to have 3, 4, 5 reliable pass rushers on your team in order to kind of execute this defense at a high level. The Cowboys have the numbers to hit that kind of threshold, but they need this, they need 1 or 2 of these second-round picks to hit. And hopefully all 3, because that would really, create incredible
3 second-round picks, and I guess it'd be 3 second-round picks in the last 4 drafts, right? Sam Williams was 2023. You had Marshawn Kneeland in 2024. Sam Williams, 2022. Marshawn Kneeland 2024, and then Donovan Ezeiruaku, who we're going to talk about right now, in 2025. What will his role be as a rookie? We will get to that next. Welcome back to the Locked On Cowboys podcast. We'd like to thank you for making us your first listen of the day. For your second listen, check out the Locked On NFL Scouting Show. As training camps get closer and moves are being made, hosts Kyle Krabs and Joe Marino will make you the most informed NFL fan this offseason. Find Locked On NFL Scouting on YouTube or wherever you listen to your podcasts. All right, Lena, let's talk about Donovan Ezeiruaku, who the Cowboys selected in the second round. easily my favorite pick of the 2025 draft. I did see a picture of him working out at Cowboys minicamp wearing that number 41. And honestly, he looked like a safety back there. Like he's a very small pass rusher, but he's got very, very long arms and he's incredibly productive. But how productive do you think he'll be in his first year in the NFL?
Well, I do think that he's kind of well developed in his hand usage as far as those guys coming out of college into the NFL. But you're right; he's an undersized player, so the question does remain: is it going to be enough to kind of immediately make an impact? And I think the question is answered probably by what is his usage going to be? Does he earn a role as a guy that they are putting out in high leverage pass down situations where he needs to get after the passer? Is he playing the early in on first and second downs? Is he just basically being used as the kind of fourth pass rusher? I think all of that's going to depend on his role, and I think he's going to earn a lot of that during training camp. But if he goes out here in training camp and he shows that he belongs, that hey, this is not too big for him, he's going out there. He's beaten Guyton, he's beaten Steele. The Rams come out here and he's beaten their guys too. Then, yeah, I think that there's a chance that he gets into a situation where maybe he's splitting some of those Dante Fowler defensive pass rusher role snaps. And, maybe early, what it is that early on, as Fowler is taking those starter snaps as the younger guys develop, it's Ezaraku who's kind of spelling him on those clear passing down situations as a pass rusher. So I think that he's going to have opportunity. There's a even though there's a lot of people in the spot with him, there's a runway for him to get an opportunity to play on Sundays. But I think he's got to earn it first, and it all kind of starts in training camp, and specifically on the 27th once pads come on, because we got to see him getting some pad work against the NFL offensive tackles.
The great news for Ezaraku is that they're not going to be overly reliant on him early in the season. This isn't a situation like, remember 2014 when the Cowboys drafted DeMarcus Lawrence in round 2, and it's like, okay, DeMarcus, you got to come in and start right away. Opposite of Jeremy Mincy, I think, was the other pass rusher at the time. Come in and you got to be our best pass rusher, and then he gets hurt and he misses basically the entire season, right? Like the Cowboys are not in that situation. He could very easily be the 5th defensive end on this roster. And that's not because he's playing poorly or anything. That maybe Sam Williams and Kneeland and Fowler are all just playing better than him, right? So that's the great news, is that he's not going to be rushed onto the field. He's going to get plenty of opportunities, but he's also going to have to earn them, which is great news for him. And it's great news for the Cowboys.
Yeah, and again, it goes back to the kind of compete atmosphere that's around here. I don't think he's going to shy away from that based on the interviews we've heard from him and the kind of person it sounds like he is. So, yeah, I think for him, this is a better situation than the DeMarcus Lawrence situation, where he's being forced onto the field when he already, would have driven himself to try to get onto the field. But now he's being relied upon, and the pressure of that, maybe it doesn't fold him, but it puts him in a bad light. It definitely makes his job more difficult.
Well, can I give you another example? Like, there
please.
Wasn't a big difference between like where Taco Charlton and Donovan Ezeiruaku were drafted. That's probably 15 picks, right? If you look on like consensus boards, in fact, a lot of them have Donovan Ezeiruaku higher. But remember that 2017 season, the Cowboys needed a starting defensive end with some size and length, and Taco was pushed into a starting role, and he wasn't ready for it. And maybe his career goes a little differently if he's a backup that has to earn snaps versus somebody who is instantly thrown into the starting lineup. Again, I'm not saying that, you get the point. I'm not saying that Taco was a good pick or anything like that, but I'm saying I think Donovan is in a really good situation where he's not going to have to play to his weaknesses. Like he's probably not going to be out on a bunch of rundowns on goal line and short yardage. He's going to be on the field when it's time to get after the quarterback, and that's what he does the best.
Taco and Ezaraku are both limited players coming into the NFL. The difference between the two is that Ezaraku is going to be deployed in such a way, and Taco did not get deployed like that. Taco got deployed like he was ready to play all the full snaps of being an NFL defensive end, and he certainly was not.
And sometimes that's the difference between a first and second round pick. If you're a second round pick, you can be a role player in year one, but we know the Cowboys, if you're a first round pick, you're going to play a lot. different situations. We should mention one more player, Peyton Turner, a former first-round pick from Houston, long, athletic, hasn't really turned it into a lot of production, but he's at least a different type of body that the Cowboys are bringing into their defensive line.
I think you said it, right? Another guy that's different body type, maybe a little bit more solid on the outside. I mean, that's not even necessarily his game, I mean, he wasn't necessarily a strong run defender, coming out of college, and I don't think much changed in New Orleans. But I do think he can, play with some leverage. He can play his end. And it just gives you a different body type to attack a defensive front. And I think that's the other thing too, is if this defense is going to be interesting, they're going to need to play with different fronts. And that means they're going to need different body types. So even though we talked about Solomon Thomas as a defensive tackle, I admitted that he probably isn't much of an inside-outside player. I do still think you're going to see him playing some 5 technique when they're doing some interesting mint fronts or different type of front stuff. So look for these guys to kind of mix it up a lot and play all over the place, because I think that that's going to be part of what this defense wants to do. Maybe not as much stunting and twisting as much as we saw before, but maybe more just interesting alignments that gives their guys opportunity to take advantage of matchups the way that they need to.
And one more player really quickly, Tyrus Wheat, who has been kind of on the roster, off the roster. They've moved him to linebacker. He's going to be a full-time defensive end, similar to Peyton Turner in the sense that he is a bigger body defensive end, nowhere near as long, but at least he's got some experience.
Yeah, a guy that you can throw out there and he can hold the edge as a defender. I don't know how much he provides you as a pass rusher, but he's not going to embarrass you necessarily. Just kind of a fringe player that, if he's on the practice squad, he could be called up and give you some snaps if you need him.
All right, that is it for today's show. We'd like to thank you for making Locked On Cowboys your first listen every single day. Go download the podcast wherever you get your podcasts. We are free and available on all platforms. Follow Landon on Twitter at McCoolBCB. I'm at Marcus _Mosher, and we will see you right back here tomorrow.